the second Africa Climate Summit has concluded in Ethiopia, with the continent declaring its readiness to present a climate model centered on investment to tackle the global crisis. But will Africa's push for homegrown solutions and a unified continental voice to secure fair climate financing ahead of COP30 in Brazil chart a path towards a more sustainable future? Now, the second Africa Climate Summit marked a crucial moment for the continent's climate agenda. That is, transitioning from being viewed solely as vulnerable to emerging as a leader in climate innovation. The resolutions adopted by African leaders and policymakers set the stage for COP30 and beyond, calling for equitable climate finance, African ownership of solutions, and transformative changes in global climate policy. According to the Global Center on Adaptation, Africa requires at least $70 billion annually to adapt to the impacts of the climate crisis. Yet in 2023, it received only $15 billion in adaptation finance. Budget shortfall continues to be a big concern. In July, the International Court of Justice directed nations to honor their international commitments to curb pollution, warning that they could face compensation claims from countries severely affected by climate change. African leaders have accused wealthy countries of failing to deliver the adaptation finance needed for the continent.
The vulnerability of our member countries caused by climate change, debt burden, and the structural inequalities of the international financial architecture must be redressed through climate justice. We need a genuine cooperation for the implementation of our continent's adaptation plan by providing financial resources, technology, and expertise.
African leaders have launched a framework to mobilize $100 billion from development banks and private lenders to fund renewable-powered industrialization.
We're not here to negotiate our survival. We're here to design the world's next climate economy. If we make the right choices now, Africa can be the first continent to industrialize without destroying its ecosystems.
Africa, which contributes less than 4% of global emissions, has endured some of the harshest impacts of the climate crisis. Many African governments are being forced to divert up to 9% of their budgets to respond to climate extremes. Flash floods caused due to extreme rainfall disrupted the normal life in Nigerian cities. According to local officials, more than 200 people have been killed since the beginning of the rainy season in May.
Increased rainfall and other extreme weather events brought on by climate change are the cause of flash floods. As of Tuesday, the 9th of September, Lagos saw flash floods and heavy traffic due to early morning rainfall. However, by the afternoon, the flood waters had receded in the majority of the areas, while some are still heavily flooded.
When I saw the water, I ran back, despite the fact that I rented a rain boot. So I think government should really help us in these aspects because it's really affecting we Nigerians. I couldn't get what I came to get, I had to go back. So if I want to come and get what I want to get, it's going to be during the dry season. I wouldn't come when it's raining. So government, we plead that please come to the rescue of we Lagosian and help us because it's really affecting us, especially for those that are selling. Most of them did not even open their shops today because of the flood.
Residents in flood-prone districts, including part of Lekki and Ikorodu, were encouraged to relocate to higher ground after a major flood. When the Nigerian Meteorological Agency and the Lagos State Administration warned that the 2025 rainy season will bring above normal rainfall to Lagos, which could lead to flash floods.
We don't have plan for now because there's no money at hand now. We don't have plan for now. You know, everything before you plan something, you have to have money first.
Lagos continues to face recurrent floods as the state government acknowledges the identification of climate change, drainage systems, and waste management as the primary causes of flooded areas.
Somalia is facing another severe drought, a sign of how climate change is disrupting life in one of the world's most fragile countries. After 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons, followed by sudden flash floods, millions are struggling to feed their families. Somalia contributes less than 0.03% of global emissions, yet it's among the most climate vulnerable nations. The rains no longer come when expected, and when they do, they often bring destruction. Farmers lose crops, herders lose livestock, and families are forced to migrate. This isn't only about environment. Displacement is driving insecurity, sparking competition over scarce resources, and deepening humanitarian need. Aid agencies warn that nearly half of the population now faces acute food shortages. The Somali government has pledged adaptation measures, but with limited resources, communities here are carrying the weight of a crisis they barely contributed to.
Now let's hear more from Julius Ngoma. He's the National Coordinator, Civil Society Network on Climate Change. He joins me from Lilongwe, Malawi. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Matters. Straight to it now, what is preventing, developed nations from delivering on their climate finance promises?
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. I think there are a myriad of reasons why these developed nations are not delivering on their promises. Of course, the most critical issue has been trying to avoid responsibility, which we call historical responsibility in terms of addressing the impacts of climate change by providing the necessary financing to poor nations or developing nations to manage impacts of climate change. But also, we've seen over the years that this issue of climate change has been has actually elevated from just being an environmental issue. I think there are myriad other issues that are also aligned to the same. Most importantly, we've seen over the years climate change growing as a political issue, also a social but also economic issue. So you've seen if you have noted how the developed countries have been acting, instead of looking at what maybe their responsibility in terms of supporting climate change, addressing climate change impacts in the global south, they've also started looking at what opportunities climate change is bringing for them to also even find or more money for their own countries to also support their GDPs. So this is why instead of just counting on the responsibility in terms of developed nations getting finances that is in line with the from the public sources, they would be talking about a number of other sources, private sector investment and so on and so forth, which does not really resonate with the issue of addressing the impacts of climate change within the principles of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
All right, and just based on what you're saying, that's non-committal. Developed, these rich countries are not committing themselves to ensuring that they pay for, the emission that their countries actually give out. Then one would wonder how much of the promised climate finance actually reaches African countries and through what mechanisms.
Yeah, so I think we've over the years we've seen climate finance being channeled in within so many arrangements. Under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, we expect climate finance to flow through the Green Climate Fund, through the Global Environmental Facility and its subsidiaries, the Adaptation Fund, the Least Developed Countries Fund, and so on. Recently, we've also seen under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, parties agreeing to the fund to responding to loss and damage, which we expected that a lot of money is going to be flowing from developed to developing countries, but you've seen only maybe less than 100 billion of resources getting into countries in the developing world, but which is not even commensurate with the needs and priorities of these developing countries. Just for example, UNEP gap report indicates that developing countries needs about 250 billion per year only for adaptation alone. But you've seen how much resources have been put across mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage is not even aligning to the needs only for adaptation. So that has been a very big problem for developing countries.
And when you're talking about priorities, so how can Africa, then one would wonder how can African countries ensure that global climate agreements like what you've talked about, the Paris Agreement, reflects the continent's priorities?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important that we have to keep ourselves as a globe aligned to the frameworks that the countries have agreed upon. The UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol, which also was in place, but also the Paris Agreement itself, which actually has two main ways on how we want to address, to support countries to manage the climate change. So we have the NDCs and also the National Adaptation Plan. We would rather see developed countries investing or putting more, financial resources and even technical resources towards implementation of the nationally determined contributions and also the National Adaptation Plan. At the moment, about 22 countries have actually submitted nationally determined, the national adaptation plans have completed the process, but in the least developed countries, but they have not yet even, been supported in terms of implementing the same. There's a lot of gap that needs to be addressed in terms of putting more financing to this, and we would rather see those developed countries aligning themselves towards supporting these two important processes, the NDCs and the National Adaptation Plan, so that we are able to see countries in the developing world be able to move towards resilience as from the impacts of climate change.
All right, and finally, then what could be Africa's pitch to attract private investment for, green projects, even as they look forward to the COP30 conference that will be held in Brazil this year?
Just to say the truth, within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, it's about mobilization, provision of public resources from developed countries to developing countries, so that we address the impacts of climate change and even mitigate the climate change by lowering the emissions. This question of private sector investment is a new concept. This is why I was saying, I was talking about countries in the global north trying to also, find ways on actually making money out of climate change crisis. But suffice to say that if that's the case, then we need to look at how best we can leverage on the existing resources as Africa to be able to attract that kind of financing from the private sector elsewhere, so that we are not able to endear ourselves further, but also not to put more burden and vulnerabilities to the communities out there across Africa. So we can actually leverage on what we have as resources and ensuring that we can turn these resources into something that can actually attract private sector to be able to invest, but with minimal kind of, a burden to the communities.
All right, Julius Ngoma, the National Coordinator, Civil Society Network on Climate Change. Thank you for talking to us here on Africa Matters. We have more interesting stories here on Africa Matters, including...
I am Rollin Sikamam, and I will be highlighting the pain and suffering of nearly 50,000 displaced people in the violent land dispute in Ghana's Savannah region.
The violent clashes over a small piece of land in Ghana's Savannah region has led to at least 31 people being killed and a staggering 50,000 being displaced. Rolonsika Mam traveled to the scene and filed this report.
Fleeing for their lives, they've trekked over 90 kilometers to the Sawa displacement camp, leaving behind a piece of land in the Benyiri that at least 31 people died over. It started as a gunfight and turned into an extended killing spree. Kun Gunubi comes from a home where 5 people were allegedly wiped out. Her son, the family's breadwinner, among them. Now her greatest worry is how to care for her 2 remaining sick dependents.
They killed the one who takes care of me and his 2 sick brothers. Now I don't know what life holds for us.
The camp offers tens of thousands that have been displaced meager offerings. Daduma Jabata managed to escape the camp with her 6 little children.
The twins are 4 months old. Together with these little ones, we sleep in the bush, no food, no water for days before arriving here. But we thank God we are safe.
Those who've reached the camp are safe, but food is their urgent need. What the government and the humanitarian agencies are doing is not nearly enough. The numbers are overwhelming, and many more are still arriving.
The feeding is also another challenge, because from the beginning it wasn't easy. Up to now, we feed them twice a day. For now, since morning, we are now trying to see how we can organize something for them to eat.
And what's the time now?
It's 11:53.
Our team made it to where the killing began. Now deserted and almost empty, many are still leaving. The desperate few are hanging on.
We fear, but we have nowhere to go. 5 people are still missing in our community, and we haven't heard from them. We don't sleep. We sit in groups very much alert because we don't know when the attackers will strike again.
And as the evening wears on, uncertainties and fear begin to grow. No one knows what the night will bring, or if the battle between the 2 warring parties will be resolved.
The king and overlord of Gonjaland, the Yegbonwura, in whose territory the brave force are 11, have accepted to receive the leadership, and the signals have been given for everyone by the king to disarm and not to be engaged in any level of reprisal attacks or violence in one way or the other. And that is building the level of confidence.
31 dead in a fight over this piece of land, and over 50,000 people displaced, 13,000 of which crossed to the Ivory Coast. But at the camp, the elderly hope to spend their final days in peace in their communities, but wonder if they will ever return.
To the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo now, where women have turned to artisanal mining as a means of survival. Now, many of these women are survivors of brutal violence of the Daesh-linked Allied Democratic Forces attacks that killed their relatives, leaving them with the burden of caring for their children alone. Christina Simic reports.
Women at this Pangoy gold mine have been displaced by violence and forced into the perilous work of artisanal mining. Maman Soki lost her daughter and sister in an Allied Democratic Forces attack on her village. She has spent the last 3 months working at the mine to support her family.
I fled after witnessing my loved ones killed by the ADF during an attack on our village, my children, friends, and many other villagers. They burned our homes and everything we owned. We had nowhere else to go, so we came here. We saw others had come and decided to follow.
Forbidden from entering the digging pits, women here are left with the most grueling and lowest paid work, hauling 30-kilogram sacks of gold-bearing debris to processing sites. Soki, who needs to feed the 4 children in her care, can earn up to $8 a day.
In my notebook, I see she's completed 17 trips today. 2 trips pay 3,000 Congolese francs, or about $1.30 US. So if you calculate 1,500 per trip times 17, you can see that she will earn 25,500, or just over $8 for the day.
Soki cares not only for her own orphaned grandson, but also for her late sister's 2 young children. Despite the low wage, she hopes to save enough to open a small food store and leave mining behind.
Every morning, she leaves us money to buy flour and other food. We live thanks to her. She is saving up to send us to school and buy school supplies and pay our fees. We pray that God gives her a long life and protects her from all harm. We worry for her safety when she goes to Pangoy. She could run into rebels, not even just the ADF, but others who could harm her.
On top of the burdens, Soki must also bear the immense loss from conflict. The only thing left of her sister, killed by the rebels in April, is a single photograph. And the attacks continue. Dozens of people were killed while attending a funeral just days ago. In July, 38 worshippers were killed in a church attack in Ituri province by ADF militants, according to officials. And last month, the UN peacekeeping mission reported that at least 52 civilians were massacred in North Kivu province. Amid the loss and hardship, Soki's survival has come at a heavy personal cost, but hope endures in the lives she now protects. Christina Shimich, Africa Matters.
In Eswatini, 16% of the population, or nearly 200,000 people, face severe hunger, according to the latest Integrated Food Security Phase Classification report. But rural women are taking action. They've started a seed bank to preserve traditional crops and local dishes, as Nokuhanya Muse reports.
This seed bank in Manzini aims to preserve rare indigenous seeds, which is a crucial resource for local farmers. The legume and grain seeds here can withstand the harsh environmental conditions that come with climate change.
We want to multiply a lot of these traditional seeds so that women are able to, whenever there are crises, they run short of these seeds, they'll be able to come to the center and get more seeds to go and use them in their homesteads.
The seeds stored here are unique varieties of maize and legumes that include cowpeas, jugo beans, mung beans that might have otherwise been lost.
Through the seed bank, the women are fostering a community of resilience, ensuring that traditional practices are passed down and food security is upheld.
According to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification for Eswatini, acute food insecurity could rise to 21% by early next year.
The health institute is collapsing. We don't have medication and drugs. So our own traditional seeds, they've got the medicinal value and the nutritional value, especially those which are produced organically without using any chemicals. You easily preserve your own vegetables. It might be even the traditional vegetables you name.
The seed bank serves as a hub of knowledge where women like 27-year-old mother Nelly Masego gather to learn how to tackle the disappearance of once cherished traditional dishes that have become nearly untraceable.
Growing up, I've been eating a lot of fast food, but I came here to work closely with the women, and I've learned that from sustainable agriculture and seed saving, we can ensure food security. For example, from the seeds that the women that we save as women, we use them to make food that is very healthy.
The Rural Women's Assembly argues that the national seed policy focused primarily on hybrid seeds in promoting food security. But the government insists that the policy covers all types of seeds, including indigenous ones, which continue to thrive in a changing world. Nogukanya Musi, Africa Matters, Manzini, Eswatini.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode and leave your comments on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.